Peter Prescott leaned over the gutted engine housing, sweat rolling from his temple into the grime on his jaw. Sparks spat out from a cracked conduit as he wrestled a spanner against the warped bolt. Around him, the Titan shipyard echoed with the hiss of venting steam and the muffled curses of mechanics trying to keep machines alive that should have been scrapped years ago. "Hold it steady," Peter muttered, not looking up. A young apprentice braced the panel with both arms. His hands shook with the effort. Peter felt the vibration run through the tool into his bones. The bolt gave with a sudden snap, nearly throwing the wrench into his teeth. He let out a breath that tasted of metal dust. Before the kid could ask if it was fixed, a shadow swept across the bay. The chatter of voices died at once. Even the clang of tools hitting the floor seemed to hold its breath. Peter straightened slowly, the wrench still in his grip, and saw them. They came in perfect formation, tall figures wrapped in armor that looked more ceremonial than practical. At the center walked the one Peter recognized from the broadcast screens. Koresh of Ulthurai, commander of a fleet that had burned colonies into ash. The alien's presence pulled silence like gravity. His eyes, slit-pupiled and faintly glowing, searched the room until they landed on Peter. The apprentice whispered, "Why is he here?" Peter didn't answer. Koresh did not bark orders, nor did he sneer the way most council envoys did when they visited the shipyards. He walked past the rows of frozen workers and stopped in front of Peter's workbench. Then, in a motion so shocking it made men gasp aloud, Koresh went down on one knee. The armored plates of his legs struck the deck with a hollow clang. The soldiers behind him shifted uneasily, as though unsure if they should follow or draw weapons. Koresh placed a scorched fusion core on the floor. Its casing was fractured, the glow inside flickering like a dying heartbeat. His voice, deep and resonant, rolled through the bay. "Human," he said, each syllable deliberate. "This engine has failed us. I was told you can make the impossible burn." Peter's jaw tightened. He was used to politicians sneering at his crew, used to captains demanding miracles without giving so much as clean tools, but this was different. The most feared commander of the council had knelt in a Terran shipyard, asking for help. From the corner of his eye, Peter saw Maria Lopez step forward, hand resting near her holster. She wasn't pointing it, but she wanted Koresh to see she was ready. "You're out of your jurisdiction here," she said flatly. "You don't get to march in and demand favors." Koresh didn't rise. His gaze stayed fixed on Peter. "I do not ask favors. I ask survival." The words rippled through the workers, half awe, half fear. Peter finally set the wrench down. His hands were black with oil and trembling just slightly. He told himself it was the strain, not the weight of every eye on him. "You brought this across half the system," Peter said. His voice was calm, but the anger pressed through it like a fault line. "So, what, your council can't fix its own damn machines?" The soldiers bristled. Maria's thumb tapped against the grip of her sidearm. Koresh didn't blink. "No," Koresh said simply. "We cannot." Peter crouched, ran a finger along the jagged split in the core, and felt a pulse that shouldn't have been there. For a moment he thought it was his imagination, the tremor of his own heartbeat echoing through the metal, but then it throbbed again. A rhythm, faint but steady. He drew his hand back. Behind him, Maria muttered just loud enough for him to hear. "That thing isn't dead." Peter wiped the grease across his coveralls, eyes never leaving the wounded engine. Koresh's stare was unrelenting, waiting for an answer. And Peter knew, as much as he wanted to throw the core back into the alien's arms, that he was already caught in something far larger than a repair job. He stood, exhaled, and spoke the only words that made sense. "I'll look at it," he said. "But if I find what I think I felt, you'd better pray we don't fix it." The silence that followed was heavier than the metal walls around them. The cracked fusion core was hauled into Titan's restricted hangar under more security than Peter had ever seen for a machine. Soldiers in matte armor patrolled the perimeter, while technicians whispered about what kind of trouble he had dragged into their shipyard. Peter crouched beneath the scaffolding, his hands buried in wiring so delicate that one slip could vaporize the whole bay. He hated the silence that came whenever Koresh entered. The alien commander never shouted, never boasted, but the air seemed to contract around him. Maria Lopez paced nearby, restless. Her boots clicked against the grated deck. I still don't get why we're even touching this thing. Council warships have engineers. Let them fix their own mess. Maybe they tried, Peter muttered without looking up. Maybe that's the problem. Maria stopped. What do you mean by that? Peter pulled a charred cable free. It came away too easily, as though it wanted to detach. He studied the faint shimmer across its surface. This isn't burning out like a normal system. It's feeding on itself. Maria frowned. Engines don't feed. Yeah, Peter said quietly. That's what I'm worried about. Across the hangar, Koresh stood still as a statue, arms folded behind his back, watching. His soldiers remained close, but their unease was obvious in the way their hands hovered over their weapons. They were warriors, not mechanics, and the human way of crawling elbow-deep into a dying engine baffled them. Peter finally stood, flexing his stiff fingers. If I patch this like any other core, it'll overload again. Maybe worse. Koresh stepped forward, his heavy footfalls echoing. And if you succeed? Peter glanced at him. Then you'll have something that doesn't belong to either of us. Maria shot him a warning look, but Koresh didn't flinch. His expression was unreadable, but Peter caught a flicker, respect, maybe, or calculation. Before the conversation could deepen, the hangar doors slid open. A human delegation strode in, led by Minister Alain Rousseau. His suit was spotless, his smile practiced. He raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear. Commander Koresh, I see you've brought your problem to our finest mechanic. He extended his hand, but Koresh did not take it. Rousseau's grin faltered, then shifted to Peter. And Mr. Prescott, once again the galaxy turns its eyes on you. A strange gift you've given us. Peter wiped his hands on a rag, unimpressed. Not sure gift's the word I'd use. Rousseau chuckled like it was a private joke. Semantics. The council is in session as we speak, debating your little miracle. Some fear it, some envy it. I intend to ensure humanity benefits from it. Maria stepped in front of him, arms crossed. You mean you'll trade it away for a seat at their table? Rousseau's smile thinned. Security chiefs should mind their posts, not politics. Koresh's voice cut through like a blade. Your politicians waste words while your mechanic bleeds hands. If this core fails, your colonies burn first. The hangar froze. Rousseau looked at Koresh with narrowed eyes, and for a heartbeat, Peter thought the minister might actually lose his composure. Instead, Rousseau smoothed his jacket. Then we had better ensure the mechanic succeeds. He turned on his heel and left, leaving the taste of polished lies behind. Peter exhaled through his teeth. I hate that man. Maria's reply was sharp. Not as much as I do. That night, Peter worked alone, the hangar humming with low lights and distant generators. His tools clicked softly as he wired a new regulator into the core. Sweat stung his eyes. Then it happened. The lights flickered, not from the power grid but from the core itself. The glow inside the fractured housing pulsed brighter, syncing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Peter froze, hand hovering just above the casing. The hum rose in pitch, vibrating through the floor and into his bones. Don't do this, he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to himself or the machine. The glow steadied, brightened, then settled as though waiting. Behind him, Maria's voice broke the silence. Peter. He flinched, dropping the tool. She stood in the shadows, arms crossed, watching the core. Her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. That thing, it's listening to you. Peter bent down, picked up the tool, and forced his voice steady. Engines don't listen. Maria stepped closer. Maybe this one does. The next morning, before they could continue, alarms blared through Titan. Not system alarms, not machinery failures. A breach. Maria drew her weapon. We've got company. Koresh stormed into the hangar, his blade drawn, eyes burning. Assassins, he growled. Draven has moved against us. Peter's gut twisted. Who the hell is Draven? Koresh didn't answer. The hangar doors exploded inward, and figures in council armor poured through, weapons raised. The assassins are here to kill Peter and take the core. Titan Shipyard, once a place of grease and sweat, has become a battlefield. The hangar erupted in gunfire. Sparks flared off metal walls as council soldiers stormed in with precision that spoke of training meant for war zones, not assassinations. Their rifles spat plasma, cutting through tool racks and machinery like paper. Maria shoved Peter hard behind a steel column and dropped 2 attackers before they could cross the floor. "Stay down, Prescott," she barked, her tone sharp but carrying something like fear. Peter pressed his back against the column, ears ringing. He wasn't a soldier, and he hated the metallic tang of burning air. His wrench, still clutched in one hand, was useless against armored killers. Koresh charged into the line of fire with his blade gleaming, cleaving through the first squad. His soldiers followed, less disciplined than the assassins but driven by rage. The clash of steel and plasma lit the hangar in chaos. Peter risked a glance at the core. Even in the middle of the firefight, it pulsed brighter, as though feeding on the violence. One assassin broke past Maria's cover and lunged. Peter barely ducked the strike, the plasma edge searing the metal beside his face. His wrench came up instinctively, slamming against the assassin's visor with a crack. The figure reeled but didn't fall. Peter froze, certain it was over. A blade burst through the assassin's chest from behind. Koresh wrenched it free and shoved the body aside. He loomed over Peter, voice hard. "They want you alive. That is worse than dead." Peter opened his mouth to demand an explanation, but another wave flooded in from the side entrance. Maria swore, dragging him by the collar as the hangar fell under their control. Koresh fought like a storm, but the numbers kept coming, cutting down his men one by one. A stun blast caught Peter in the chest. His muscles locked and the world spun. Maria's voice blurred into noise. The last thing he saw before blackness was Koresh bellowing in fury as council troops dragged him toward the bay doors. When Peter woke, the air was cold and dry. He was strapped to a chair in a room with smooth alloy walls, no seams, no exits. His wrists ached from the restraints. A figure stepped into view. Armor polished to a mirror, voice calm and deliberate. "Mr. Prescott," he said as though greeting an old friend. "I am Counselor Draven." Peter's throat was dry. He forced his words out anyway. "Why not just kill me?" Draven smiled thinly. "Because death is waste. You have touched something you should not have, and I want to understand how. Humanity believes it creates engines. But the truth is simpler. You awaken them." Peter shook his head. "That's insane. We just fix what's broken." Draven's gaze sharpened. "Do you think Koresh kneels out of respect? He kneels out of fear. Your kind meddles in forces older than the council itself, and he clings to your defiance like a drowning man. You should ask yourself, mechanic, why does the machine answer your hand and not ours?" Peter clenched his jaw. The pulse he had felt through the core returned in memory, stronger now, like it had followed him here. The door hissed open behind Draven. A soldier whispered something in his ear, and his expression soured. "Your commander has made his choice," Draven said coldly. "He rejects the council's will." He leaned close, his voice a low growl. "Do not mistake his loyalty for strength. He will break, and when he does, you will beg to show me what you are hiding." Draven left, the door sealing with a hiss. Silence returned, pressing against Peter's chest harder than the restraints. Somewhere, faint and impossible, he thought he heard it, the heartbeat of the core. Not in the hangar, not in machinery, but inside the walls themselves. The prison ship drifted in the void, disguised as a medical transport to avoid suspicion. From his cell, Peter felt none of the comfort its false name suggested. The walls thrummed faintly with power, a hum that seemed too familiar. Every time the vibration passed through the chair restraints, he felt the echo of the Titan hangar, the glow of that fractured core. He had no window, no clock, no sense of how long he'd been held. Only the soft hiss of the door as Draven returned each day like a man checking on an experiment. "Your people are scrambling," Draven said one visit, hands clasped behind his back as if giving a lecture. "Some want to fight. Others cling to politicians who promise survival through surrender. They do not see that the war is already lost." Peter glared up at him. "We've been losing for years and we're still here." Draven's smile was patient, like a teacher correcting a stubborn child. Yes, you are here. And so is your machine. Without it, you would be nothing more than a colony fire waiting to be extinguished. He leaned closer. But with it, perhaps you could be the spark that burns us all. Peter said nothing, jaw locked tight. He wouldn't give Draven the satisfaction of seeing how deeply those words landed. Far from the prison ship, Koresh stood aboard his own cruiser, watching a fleet gather on his long-range display. It was not his fleet. It was Draven's. Maria Lopez paced behind him, fists clenched at her sides. She'd forced her way into Koresh's command, refusing to leave Titan when Peter was taken. Now her voice carried the raw edge of someone who had nothing left to lose. He's on that ship. You're telling me your council is just going to sit back while your rival abducts one of ours? Koresh's jaw tightened. The council does not see it as abduction. They see it as containment. Draven calls your mechanic a contagion. Too dangerous to let spread. Maria swore under her breath. And you? What do you call it? Koresh turned to face her, his towering form casting her in shadow. I call it hope. A word my people have forgotten. For the first time, Maria saw not just the commander, but the man weighed down by choices. His loyalty to the council was crumbling, piece by piece. She stepped closer. Then help me bring him back. Koresh held her gaze for a long moment. Then he gave the order that would mark him a traitor forever. Prepare the strike. The attack came fast and violent. Koresh's cruiser dropped from stealth, cannons flaring, cutting into Draven's escorts before they could form ranks. Maria led a boarding party, her rifle kicking hard against her shoulder as she tore through the corridors of the prison ship. The fighting was brutal. Council troops were disciplined, their volleys precise. Human Marines, few as they were, fought with reckless defiance. Koresh himself carved a path with his blade, each strike a thunderous reminder of why he'd once been feared above all others. In the chaos, Maria kicked open the door to Peter's cell. He squinted against the sudden light, barely believing she was real. Took you long enough, he rasped. She gave a quick grin, breathless from the fight. Next time you get kidnapped, try not to enjoy the vacation. They cut his restraints, but Peter barely had time to stand before the deck shook with impact. Draven's voice boomed through the ship's comms. Koresh, you betray your people for these primitives? Then you will share their extinction. The bulkheads groaned as heavy fire pounded the hull. Maria pulled Peter's arm over her shoulder and dragged him into the corridor. Koresh met them halfway, blood streaking his armor, his expression grim but unbroken. We cannot hold this ship, Koresh said. We take the core, we run. Peter's stomach dropped. The core? Here. Koresh nodded once. Draven would never leave it behind. He knows what it means. They reached the chamber where the core was housed and Peter froze. It was no longer fractured, no longer dying. The glow inside had stabilized, pulsing steady and strong, and when he stepped closer, it brightened as if recognizing him. Maria muttered, "That thing gives me the creeps." Peter placed a hand on the casing. The hum ran up his arm, into his chest, syncing perfectly with his heartbeat. "It's not just a machine," he whispered. Koresh loomed over them, his voice low. "Then tell me what it is, human." Peter shook his head, eyes fixed on the glow. "I don't know. But it's growing." A violent shudder rocked the ship, alarms screaming. Koresh's soldiers shouted reports of boarding parties, hull breaches, fire spreading through the decks. Maria tightened her grip on her rifle. "We don't have time for guesses. Either we move this thing or it all ends here." Peter pulled his hand back reluctantly. The core's light dimmed as though unwilling to let go. He felt a hollow ache in his chest, as if part of himself had been left behind inside it. Koresh gave the order. His soldiers began locking the core into a transport cradle, every second stolen from the storm raging around them. Peter forced himself to focus, but the thought gnawed at him. If the engine was alive, what would happen when it had enough strength to stop listening? The corridor outside thundered with approaching footsteps, dozens of them, closing fast. Maria raised her rifle, Koresh his blade, Peter clutching nothing but the weight of a question he wasn't ready to answer. And the core's pulse kept rising, brighter and faster, as if it had already chosen the moment for them. The ship was splitting apart. Bulkheads bent inward with each impact, sparks raining from the ceiling, smoke curling through the broken lights. Maria stood at the choke point of the corridor, firing burst after burst into the squads that surged toward them. Koresh waded into the fray beside her, his blade cleaving through armored figures with brutal efficiency. Still more important, inside the chamber, Peter clung to the transport cradle as the core throbbed with growing intensity. Its glow filled the walls, painting the smoke with eerie shades of silver and blue. Every pulse came faster, stronger, until the vibrations rattled his teeth. "This thing isn't stable," he shouted, though he wasn't sure if he was warning them or himself. Koresh slammed a soldier against the wall with a guttural roar and turned, blood running down his arm. "It will not survive long if we leave it here. Nor will we." Peter stared at the cradle, then at Koresh. "You don't understand. It's not going to let us decide." Before Koresh could answer, the comms crackled. Draven's voice filled the chamber, cold and cutting. "You think you can steal from me, Koresh? You think I would not see this betrayal coming? That core is not your salvation. It is a weapon, one that will bury you as surely as it buries them." The doors at the far end of the chamber buckled. A shaped charge tore through, flooding the room with smoke and the heavy silhouettes of Draven's personal guard. Koresh gritted his teeth. "Maria! Protect Mercer!" Maria barked a laugh between gunshots. "Like I needed reminding." The guards advanced with precision, laying down disciplined fire. Koresh met them head-on, blade flashing in the haze, while Maria dropped low, rolling to the side and cutting down two at the flank. Peter barely noticed them anymore. His hand hovered over the core's casing, the light drawing him in. It wasn't just humming now, it was speaking, or at least something that felt like speaking. Words formed inside his skull, shapes of thought too raw and too vast for language. It wasn't asking for control. It wasn't asking permission. It was showing him a future. "Peter!" Maria's voice snapped him back. She was crouched low, reloading, her eyes wide with a fear he had never seen in her before. "Tell me we can move this thing now." Peter's mouth was dry. He shook his head slowly. "It doesn't want to move." Koresh roared as he cut down another guard, his chest heaving. "Then what does it want?" The core answered for him. The light erupted, a blinding surge that filled the chamber. Every soldier, every wall, every fragment of smoke froze as if caught in thick glass. Maria felt her rifle locked against her shoulder, her trigger finger unresponsive. Koresh hung mid-strike, his blade paused just shy of a guard's throat. Only Peter could move. Or maybe he wasn't moving at all, maybe the core had pulled him somewhere else. In that silence, in that frozen second, he saw it. Cities burning. Stars collapsing. Armies scattering like ash in the wind. And through it all, the same pulsing glow, spreading from world to world, devouring not through rage, but through inevitability. It wasn't a weapon. It was a seed. When the light snapped back, reality roared into motion again. Soldiers staggered, confused. Koresh finished his strike, cleaving the guard in two. Maria fired point-blank, smoke billowing. None of them seemed to realize what had happened, but Peter knew. The core had shown him, and the truth was worse than anything Draven had whispered. Draven himself entered then, striding through the carnage, unarmed, his dark eyes fixed on Peter. Bullets and blades parted around him, as if he walked in his own sphere of untouched gravity. "You see it now, don't you?" Draven's voice was low, steady. "You touched it and it touched you. Tell me, Mercer, did it show you salvation, or did it show you the end?" Peter's throat tightened. He couldn't lie. Both. Draven spread his arms as if the answer pleased him. "Then you understand why it cannot be theirs. Give it to me, and I will choose how the end arrives." Maria raised her rifle at him. "Step closer and I'll put a hole through your skull." Draven didn't even glance at her. His gaze remained locked on Peter, patient and unshakable. "She doesn't matter. Neither does Koresh. Only you, Mercer. You are the first to hear its voice. And you will be the last." The core pulsed violently, the cradle groaning under the pressure. Peter felt it pulling at him again, threads of light weaving into his chest, dragging him toward the choice no one else could see. Maria shouted over the chaos, voice raw with desperation. "Peter, whatever you're about to do, make it fast." He looked at her, at Koresh, at the battlefield burning around them, and then at Draven, who waited calmly, like a man certain of his victory. Peter placed both hands on the core. The light swallowed the chamber, brighter than any star.